everybody, welcome to another video. So today we're doing one of our little comparisons. So basically I paint bike stuff. This is if you're new to the channel. Basically I paint bike stuff, but I've got a few car panels that I do comparisons with, which is this particular video. So we're trying to compare the Aeropro R500. There's loads of different guises to this. It's made by Rongpeng, a big company in China that makes lots of spray guns, and it's sold under various brands. As I say, this particular one is an Aeropro, but they sell it under their own brand, and other brands use the same thing as well. Very similar gun to the YT160, and now the A610 as well, which is an Aeropro gun, all made by Rongpeng, all good, cheap, or relatively good cheap guns. Both of these you can get them for about $40 US, depending where you are. You might have to pay a bit more, depends on the duty regime or tax regime in the country you are. And I'm putting that up against the Ntools 4000B. Now, as far as I know, in the US and in the UK, in Europe, you can get this reasonably easier. But I know a few people from Australasia, so Australia and New Zealand, have contacted me saying that they're quite a bit more expensive over there. So you might be able to find something that's similar. These are sold under RP, 4000 RP, 4000B RP, but they're also sold under the 4000B HVLP, but they're all the same guns. They have the same caps, loads of different colours. They do gold ones, they do orange ones, they do blue ones. This one's a black one. Loads of different guns and markings, but they're effectively all the same gun. Now, the biggest difference that on paper you would see between these two, bear in mind that, you know, it depends where you are as to what price you'll get these for. The biggest difference between the two is going to be the air consumption. So I'll put a link in the description to a few videos I did trying to get to the bottom of the R500 air consumption, because I know on a few channels on YouTube it was touted as being a real low air consumption gun. Now, it's not a high air consumption gun, but it's not that low of an air consumption gun. Manufacturers quoted about 3.5 to 4 CFM. And it's not, even at 2 bar, which you actually need for clear coat like we did in this video, you need more than 2 bar. But at 2 bar it's about 7.5 CFM, and at 2.5 bar, which is 36 psi, it uses about 10 CFM, maybe slightly more than 10 CFM. So don't buy this thing thinking you're going to do your car with a 5 CFM compressor. The size of the tank matters a little, not a lot. It's your holding reserve. The thing that matters the most is the output of the compressor. As long as you've got a compressor, if you've got a gun that's using 11 CFM, as long as your compressor puts out 10 CFM, it can have 0 tank for holding the air. As long as your compressor can keep up with your gun, yes, your compressor will be going all the time, but you'll be able to finish your project. So the tank is of secondary consideration with air consumption. The main thing is the output of the compressor. So as I say, the main difference between these two is touted as air consumption. But because, as in this video, we used the R500, which is this gun here, we used it on 2.5 bar, which is 36 psi, and I reckon it, as I say, it uses about 10 CFM, and with that you will actually get a very good finish. As you can see, this is a high solids clear coat, not an ultra high solids, just a high solids clear coat. Not a particularly good quality clear coat. It's actually a U-pole clear coat. It works very well. It works ideal for most of these comparisons, as long as you've got a gun that puts a reasonable amount of material out, which both of these do. It works very, very well. And you know, that's one of the selling points of this gun is its price. You get a reasonable quality gun, built reasonably well. I'm not going to say it's built brilliantly, because it isn't, but it's built reasonably well it will certainly last you for a little while. You probably won't get a great deal of pleasure out of using it. If you're used to using more quality tools, you probably won't get a great deal of feedback from it, but it certainly does a good job at the sort of price it is. So with the Ntools, I got that at the same price as the R500, so I'm comparing the two like for like, and as I say, it depends where you are as to whether you can actually do that. But for me, the Ntools, you'll see the Ntools in a minute. When we start using it, you'll see the size of the pattern. It's definitely a bigger, wetter pattern than the R500, and by bigger I don't mean necessarily taller, you know, from top to bottom. I mean that it's wider, and a lot of people get hung up on having a really tall pattern, and that's not necessarily always what you want. Sure, a tall pattern's good, particularly good for a base coat, but if it's a tall pattern that isn't particularly wet, it's not so good in my opinion for clear coat. It depends what clear coat you're using, but certainly a clear coat like this that likes to be put on, you're better off with the more material you can get out. So that brings me to my second point really. The Ntools is a faster gun. Part of the reason for using the same panel time and time again is that people can look at different videos where I'm comparing something with something and see how long it actually takes to cover the panel in clear coat, so you can actually compare the speed of other guns. And what you will find is that the Ntools is a bit faster, and that brings me to, as I was going to say, my second point, in that the Ntools does use, even at 2 bar, does use a little bit more air than the R500, but it's only a little bit. I reckon it's probably about 11.5 CFM as opposed to about 10.5 CFM for the R500. But what you also get with the Ntools is you get speed. So it actually means you complete your project quicker. Now that might not be suitable for everybody. Some people like to take their time over painting, and that's absolutely fine. You know, everybody has their own way of doing things. But if you're talking about air consumption, because the Ntools allows you to move faster, you actually get more done. So say if you've got 2 panels to do, it will do those 2 panels quicker. So although it's using a little bit more air, it will actually only, like for like, in other words surface for surface, use the same as the R500. So there is no real difference in air consumption. So hopefully you can see that the Ntools, although it uses more air, is definitely, in my opinion, a competitor to the R500, like for like, both in price range and in the way, the amount of air it uses. I think it's a better gun. I think it's equally as well made, maybe slightly better, and I think it probably is slightly better, although both of them are actually quite well made. But it definitely atomizes finer, and that's, bear in mind, it's using a lower pressure. So I think there's definitely better engineering. I mean, it's a copy of a SATA, isn't it? So, you know, that presumably they haven't done their engineering checks. They've just copied someone in doing it, which, you know, some people will hate that, some people won't mind. I don't make an opinion. I'm just here to get the guns, try them, and tell you what I think, really. You can make your own mind up. You don't need me to tell you whether something's good or bad because they're taking someone's design. I'm not going to get into that at all. But certainly for me, it feels like a better gun to use, certainly more fun to use, and I think it gives you a better finish, as you'll see at the end. I mean, both of them give a cracking finish. There's no doubt about that at all. But I think the Ntools does atomize finer. The Ntools does use a sealing ring at the end of the tip, i.e. when you take the tip out, there's a small nylon washer at the bottom, whereas the R500 actually uses metal on metal. So some people would prefer that as regard longevity, because you don't have to think about a seal going wrong or you know, crushing and not sealing properly. But they seem quite hard wearing. I've used this gun quite a bit. I've actually lent it to a couple of people I know that have used it, and it's come back to me, and there's been no problems with it. But you know, I wouldn't be surprised, and you wouldn't be too, well, I wouldn't be too upset if after a year something went wrong with these, because you're not paying a lot of money, or certainly in the UK you're not paying a lot of money for them, so it's not worth crying over, you know, $40 at the end of the day. So I do get a bit surprised sometimes, because people exchange quite a few messages with me, and they're obviously putting a lot of thought into buying these things, and I appreciate that. To some people, $40 is more than to other people, although it's the same amount of money. But it really isn't a lot in spray gun terms for what you're getting. I mean, that includes the postage, which is going to take some of the margin away for the seller. So it really isn't a lot of money to be spending on these guns, considering the sort of performance you can get. I only get these guns because I'm not trying to be big-headed anyway, but I have quite a few guns. If you look at my channel, I do have quite a few guns to try. And out of personal preference, I wouldn't use either of these, because I would choose. I have an engineering background, so I choose to have something that's well engineered, well made, and I'm a bit of a tool snob, I suppose you would say. So I would prefer to have something like that. But I fully understand, and that's the reason for doing the videos and the reason for buying the guns, that many people, for whatever reason, whether they can't afford it, they don't want to, or whatever reason, just don't want to spend a lot of money on a spray gun. And these things are absolutely ideal for people like that, because they will allow you to get your job done without breaking the bank or starving the kids. You know, that there is definitely a place for these things, although some people, as I say, do criticize, might be the wrong word, do bring to light the fact that they're not keen on me trying these various guns. But I think I should, and that's exactly what I do. Another plus point of the Ntools is the feel in your hand. It just feels better in the hand. As I say, I think personally it's actually better made. Certainly seems better finished. Again, I'll try and remember to put a link in the description. When I first got this, I was amazed at how well it was made for something that had cost me, I think it on my doorstep it was about $44. That includes UK taxes, included everything. So about, in our local currency, about 36 GB pounds. I mean, it was an absolute bargain. The R500 is inexpensive as well. As I said, these things sell about the same price, but I was definitely struck by how well made the 4000B was. So I don't expect it, you know, you don't know, but I don't expect it to actually let people down. As I say, after a couple of years use, then it may well do, but they're not a lot of money anyway. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend the Ntools over the R500. When I first got the R500, I was quite pleased with it, because I thought this actually is quite a good gun for that sort of money. I didn't even really pick up, I have a big air supply, so I didn't even pick up really on the air consumption of the R500. It was only when people started messaging me and leaving comments on YouTube saying that, you know, oh, it's really good for a gun, especially as it doesn't use a lot of air. And I thought, well, I can't remember it using that little amount of air, and that lent me on to a couple of videos, which, as I say, I'll put a link in the description, which it's just not as little air as people say that it uses. Neither of these are like an LS 400 iWater, for example, or a SATA HVLP, a genuine SATA HVLP, you know, an X5500 or a 5000 or a 4000. Use around 16 to 16.5 CFM, as does the LS 400 iWater. So neither of these are anywhere near up that sort of level, but you will need a reasonable size compressor to power either of these. But you can see even the air cap on the Ntools is actually finished very, very well. You know, I mean, you would probably be pushed to tell that between the engineering on a SATA air cap and the Ntools air cap. Obviously with SATA they've done the R&D development, whereas Ntools literally just copy stuff. But as I say, I'm not getting into the politics of it. But as you can see, it gives a lovely finish. I was super impressed with this gun. I'll put a link in the description to a standalone video I did. I think there's a couple of videos actually I did with it. But certainly of the cheap guns, and by that I mean like sub 50 US dollars, and I quote US dollars because I buy in US dollars. It is definitely the gun to have. You can see the pattern; it matches the R500. It's just wetter. It's just more of it, which for clear coat is absolutely brilliant. You see here the R500 is the one on the right hand side, which we'll get to in a minute. The one on the left, the one we're seeing now, is the Ntools. This is 2 days afterwards. I try and put the panels away and leave them for a couple of days, and the only reason I do that is let any initial dieback take place. When you're using clear coat and you spray it, sometimes the next day or the day after it would have died back a little bit. So I think it's unfair to take a video of something that's literally just come, you know, more or less wet to the touch, because it gives you a false impression, I think, of what you can expect. So I try and leave it a couple of days, and this is after a couple of days, and you can see the colour helps it makes it look like a piece of glass. But that's the R500. There's a few nibs there you'll see which are inevitable, so they would need denibbing, but both of them actually give a very good finish. But I would give it to the Ntools of build quality, finish, and actual use as well. It just feels much better in the hand. Anyway guys, thanks as always for watching. Cheers, bye bye.